All right, buckle up. We're diving deep into quitting marijuana today, and you've brought quite a collection of YouTube videos, it seems like. You've got personal stories, advice from people who've quit, and even some social commentary.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see how many different angles there are to quitting weed.
Absolutely. So we've got I Am So Sick Chris giving us his reasons why he stopped. Then there's addiction mindset, and even, oh yeah, John Doyle's perspective in that Matt Fradd video.
It's going to be really interesting to see what stands out from all of these. So, are you ready to jump in?
Let's do it. First up, let's hear from I'm 06 Chris and his 10 reasons why I stopped smoking marijuana.
This guy is like brutally honest. You can really feel how tough it is to quit, especially these days.
What really struck you about his story?
Well, first off, the fact that he was spending like $300 a month on weed. I mean,
Wow, that's a lot of money.
right, it's a serious habit.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, what else could he be doing with that money? That actually ties in with something John Doyle brings up later about, well, the money behind marijuana legalization. He's got this whole theory about
Oh, yeah, how the system kind of wants to keep people hooked.
exactly. He thinks there's this whole financial motive behind it all, which, it's something to consider as we go through all of these.
For sure. And something else that got to me was when Chris talked about his wife's feedback about his mood. Like, he needed to hear it from her to really see how the weed was affecting him.
Sometimes we need that outside perspective,
Yeah.
right, to kind of shake us up a bit.
Totally. And he briefly mentioned his bipolar 2 diagnosis and all the intrusive thoughts he was dealing with.
Oh, right. And how at first he thought cannabis was helping with that stuff.
But then it turned out to be making it worse.
That does make you wonder, how often are people self-medicating with marijuana?
And maybe, like, ignoring some deeper issues.
Yeah, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It might cover it up for a little while, but it's not going to solve the problem.
Exactly. It seems like quitting weed might actually mean, like, starting to deal with some other stuff, too, like getting mental health support or whatever.
Absolutely. It's about the whole picture, not just ditching the weed. Speaking of which, remember that addiction mindset video about the common quitting mistakes?
Oh, yeah. The one where they talk about quitting as a journey.
Exactly. They say it's not like you just stop smoking and magically everything's great.
Right. It's a process, right?
Totally. They warn against expecting to feel amazing immediately and also comparing your journey to other people's, which is, easier said than done.
Oh, tell me about it, especially with all the stuff you see online these days.
It's so easy to scroll through social media and see everyone seemingly having a perfect, easy time quitting while you're, like, struggling.
Talk about feeling discouraged.
Exactly. And that discouragement can easily lead to relapse. They also bring up this super important point about trading one addiction for another.
Oh, whoa, yeah, like quitting weed, but then just starting to drink more or something?
Precisely. Or going overboard with caffeine, sugar, you name it.
So it might seem like you're making progress, but maybe you're just, like, switching gears.
Right. You got to ask yourself, are you truly addressing the reasons behind your substance use? Or just, finding a new outlet for it?
Deep. So if you ditch the weed but find yourself reaching for something else, it might be a sign to take a step back and figure out what's going on underneath.
Exactly. And that's where support systems come in. Addiction mindset really stresses the importance of connecting with others who understand what you're going through, like finding a community.
Right, like those support groups you were talking about.
Exactly. AA, NA, whatever feels right. They provide a sense of belonging, shared experience, and practical tools for getting through the ups and downs of quitting. And of course, professional help is always an option, especially if someone is having really rough withdrawal symptoms or struggling with their mental health. The Starts With Me video, they have those 3 tips and 3 reminders for quitting.
Yeah. They seemed kind of simple, but
Right. But let's break down why those seemingly basic actions are actually really powerful.
okay, I'm listening.
So their first piece of advice is to make a list of 5 things to do each day. Sounds super simple, right?
Yeah, but I guess it's all about creating structure, right?
Exactly. Especially when you're feeling kind of lost and overwhelmed.
Makes sense. What's the next one?
Practicing a mantra or prayer, focusing on, well, basically, the well-being of others.
Interesting. How does that help with quitting?
Well, I think it's about cultivating compassion and shifting your focus outward. When you're quitting, it's so easy to just get stuck in your own head.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So focusing on others can help break out of that.
Exactly. Their third tip is a big one. Remembering that you're doing this for you, not for your parents, your partner, or anyone else. It's your journey.
Oh, I like that. It's easy to get caught up in trying to please other people.
Right, but your motivation really has to come from within. Starts with me also emphasizes that you can't think your way into right action. You have to act your way into right thinking.
Whoa, hold on, I like that. What does that even mean, though?
Well, I think it means taking action, even small steps, instead of just, wishing things were different.
Oh, okay, so like actually making that list, or practicing a mantra, or reaching out for support.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Totally. Okay, so now, remember that John Doyle segment from the Matt Fradd video?
Oh, yeah, he's a real firecracker.
He is. So he's got this whole argument in favor of nicotine, but against marijuana.
Yeah, it's definitely a different perspective. Why does he think that way?
Well, he says nicotine helps him focus and be more productive, while weed makes people, like, dissociate from reality. He even calls it microdosing death, which I don't know exactly what that means, but
Yeah, it's pretty intense. His views definitely challenge the way we usually think about those substances.
right. Like, nicotine is so heavily stigmatized, but alcohol, which can be really destructive, is, like, totally normalized.
Hmm. That's true.
Doyle actually argues that nicotine empowers men to connect and challenge the status quo, and that makes it threatening to people in power. He's kind of suggesting there's a reason they want to keep people away from nicotine.
Like it makes him too independent or something.
Yeah, it's a bit out there, but it's interesting to think about. And he brings up some good points about how the government and capitalism shape drug culture. Remember how we talked about Chris spending $300 a month on weed?
Oh, right. And how that ties into Doyle's whole critique of the financial motives behind legalization.
Exactly.
He seems to be saying there might be more going on than meets the eye when it comes to, legalizing and commercializing weed. It's about creating a certain kind of consumer,
Interesting. Whether you agree with him or not, he definitely makes you think.
for sure. It's a good reminder to question everything and to look beyond the surface, especially when it comes to, like, cultural attitudes about drugs. It really does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About all the forces at play here. But you know what? Let's bring it back to the personal experience a little bit. What about the long-term effects of quitting?
Right. That addiction mindset video about the number one benefit of quitting was pretty powerful, especially the way they talk about words regaining their weight.
Oh, yeah, it's a great metaphor, isn't it?
Totally. It's like when we're stuck in addiction, we keep breaking promises.
And our words start to lose their meaning.
Exactly. It's as if we're like devaluing our own currency.
But then when we start following through, even on small things, we start rebuilding that trust.
Right. And our words start to carry more weight.
Speaking of regaining something, that Sobriety University video about what happens after the initial withdrawal, man, that was intense.
Oh, yeah. When they talk about how all those memories, good and bad, start coming back.
Like a flood.
It's like a dam breaks or something. It can be overwhelming for sure, but I guess there's also a sense of like freedom in finally facing those things.
Right. Makes you wonder, what does long-term recovery really look like? Are there, like, common challenges that pop
Yeah.
up later on, like months or years down the line?
Yeah, like what happens after the initial detox phase?
Well, Sobriety University seems to suggest that dealing with past trauma, processing those tough memories, is a big part of the journey.
So it's not just about stopping the weed, it's about healing the stuff that might have led to it in the first place.
Exactly. It's a
Yeah.
whole process of self-discovery and growth, which, often takes time, support, and maybe even professional help.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's dive into another challenge, that whole idea of the toxic cycle. Remember how the addiction mindset video breaks it down?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of scary how that cycle can just keep people trapped.
Totally. And denial plays a huge role in that, right?
Oh, yeah, it's like a wall preventing people from seeing the damage the weed is doing.
Right. They make excuses, downplay the consequences, blame it on something else. It's hard to break free from that cycle when you're stuck in denial.
So first step's got to be like brutal honesty.
I think so, yeah. Recognizing the harmful patterns, challenging your own justifications and all that.
No more sugarcoating.
Exactly. It's not about shame. It's about getting real so you can move forward.
It's like having that aha moment and finally seeing things clearly. So how does this toxic cycle work?
Okay, well, according to Addiction Mindset, it all starts with a trigger.
Which could be anything, really.
Yeah.
Stress, boredom, being around certain people.
Right, whatever sets it off.
Yeah.
And then comes the craving, that urge to use.
And then, of course, comes the actual using, right?
Mhm.
All those rituals and habits associated with it.
Yeah, and that leads to the temporary relief, that feeling that the weed provides. But Like they said, it's fleeting. The negative consequences always catch up.
Right, whether it's guilt, anxiety, or physical health problem.
And then boom, the cycle starts all over again. Another trigger, another craving. It can feel impossible to escape.
But like you said, understanding the cycle is important,
Yeah,
right?
it's like having a map of the enemy territory.
Makes sense. So we can learn to recognize our triggers, anticipate those cravings, and come up with better ways to deal with them.
Exactly. Without resorting to weed. IML6 Chris's story is a perfect example of this whole cycle.
Oh, yeah. He talked about using weed to cope with, well, pretty much everything. His emotions, his finances, his relationship issues.
Right. And his story shows how the cycle can kind of sneak up on you.
Mm.
What starts is like this seemingly harmless way to self-medicate or manage difficult emotions can turn into this downward spiral.
Like a slow burn, right?
Totally. And then you got addiction mindset offering all those practical strategies for breaking free, avoiding triggers, finding healthier coping mechanisms, building a strong support system.
It starts with me, with their focus on building that solid foundation, right?
Yeah, creating routines, practicing gratitude, prioritizing self-care.
It seems like quitting weed is about way more than just willpower, you know?
Absolutely. It's about changing your lifestyle to actually support sobriety.
Getting to the root of the problem. So healthy habits, supportive people, all that stuff really matters.
It's about taking control and creating a life that, well, that aligns with your values,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So beyond all that stuff we talked about, like words regaining their weight and memories coming back, what are some of the long-term benefits of quitting? Like what can people expect months or even years down the line?
Well, I think it's about rediscovering yourself.
Yeah.
Even if that process is kind of uncomfortable
Maybe
sometimes.
like taking off a mask or something.
Exactly. Shedding those layers of denial and all that.
Seeing yourself in the mirror for real.
And then there's the return of motivation, the ability to experience life more fully.
Yeah, like everything becomes brighter.
In a way, yeah. Colors, emotions, even simple things become more meaningful.
It's like you're actually present in the world again.
And quitting weed can have this ripple effect,
Yeah.
improving your physical health, your thinking, your relationships. It's not just about quitting weed. It's about creating a better life overall.
It's like hitting the reset button.
Yeah, exactly. And starting fresh with a clear mind. Of course, we have to acknowledge that long-term recovery isn't always a walk in the park.
Right, there are going to be challenges.
Absolutely. But the potential rewards are huge.
It's about living a more authentic, fulfilling life, And remember, you don't have to go through this alone. There are resources, support groups, professionals who can help you navigate those challenges. It's pretty amazing, right? How quitting weed can lead to so much more than just like not smoking anymore.
It really is.
Mm.
It's a whole transformation,
Mhm.
a chance to rebuild your life from the ground up.
Yeah, and even though it's not easy, it sounds like it's totally worth it. So I'm curious, what can people do to support like a friend or family member who's trying to quit?
Well, I think the most important thing is patience. Remember, this is a journey, not a quick fix, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly. And there are going to be good days and bad days. Your loved one might need extra support on those tough days.
So basically, no judgment.
Right. No lectures, no I told you so's. Just be there for them. Listen without judgment. Celebrate their wins, even the small ones.
Be supportive no matter what.
Exactly. And it can also be really helpful to educate yourself about marijuana addiction. The more you understand, the better you'll be able to support your loved one.
That makes sense. And it's okay to set boundaries, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable with marijuana use in your home, or if your loved one's behavior is affecting you negatively, you have every right to set those boundaries.
So just communicate clearly and respectfully.
Exactly. It's about supporting their journey, but also taking care of yourself.
Well, I feel like we've covered so much today. We've talked about personal stories, practical tips, societal influences, long-term effects.
Yeah, we really went deep. The science, the psychology, the human experience. And remember, this whole deep dive was about giving you a solid foundation, not necessarily giving you all the answers. We wanted to give you different perspectives, encourage you to think critically.
And hopefully inspire you to keep exploring this topic on your own.
So where do we go from here? I think it's clear that quitting marijuana is this complex, personal journey.
And it can be challenging, for sure.
But ultimately, it's about self-discovery.
Yeah, and creating a more authentic life.
So as we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with one last question to think about. Based on all the stuff we've talked about today, does our society kind of pressure us to just medicate our discomfort instead of actually dealing with the root causes? Something to ponder as you continue on your journey. Thanks for joining us.